Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile...
When it comes to the U.S. maintaining its status as a superpower, that above article is the single biggest hurdle to it. In order to manufacture high-end technology, you need good conductors, metals with a high amount of electrons in the valence shell, as well as things like high heat tolerance, etc. You need a steady supply of platinum, iridium, titanium, and the rest in order to keep that industry going. It doesn't matter if you're ahead of the competition in that regard if you don't have the raw material to be able to manufacture any of it, and right now almost all the proven reserves are located in Brikes. The next nearest deposits, as well as helium-3, are on the moon. Which brings me to pick related. The only way we stay above water is to start getting everything that was developed in all the various SAPs over the years declassified and available to the public, so we can make something like lunar mining a possibility. Your tax money paid for it, so you've got every right to any and all tech made in them. Anon, just 10 years ago the Chinese infiltrated a subcontractor and gained intel on the design of the F-35. We need better OPSEC. Special access programs like Aurora are not going to be released until there is a damn good reason. Whether or not it's unironically antimatter or not, it's not a nuclear option, it's exponentially more devastating. I'm talking like a cat-sized chunk would annihilate all of Europe. Also, if conspiracies are to be believed, we already have a fully operational base on the moon for mining and exoplanet exploration. There's no real forums to post to that haven't been SIOP to all hell and back. In between the literal SIO posting, there's some genuine conversations about future weapons tech and its role in geopolitics, all with the veil of paranormality and superstition. There are feds here obviously, but most have their efforts on /pol/n/b/. There's some boards that have genuine talking points about future tech and physics, but they get nuked, and while I've collected some info, I still don't have enough. Whatever the black triangle UAP's name is, hovers silently and moves absurdly fast. As for material production, the U.S is being SIOPed. The Chinese going to local governments to prevent U.S mining over environmental and health fears. They do this by funding groups that cause friction between mining companies and environmental groups. As for BRICS, which isn't even a real alliance, it was a suggestion by an economist for these countries to ally themselves. We can use the animosity of these countries against one another. China and India hate one another. South Africa and Russia are on the brink of collapse from corruption and genuine ineptitude, and Brazil is doing pretty well but are pretty close to the U.S. The US was the first to recognize its independence. China is providing Africa with infrastructure, but they don't provide political stability or real cultural changes for their societies to adapt into efficient nations. This is why Botswana did well and Somalia and Ethiopia collapsed, not resources but organization. Which makes them suitable to corruption and influence from three-letter agencies with the funds to do so. Then of course Vietnam, Australia, and Greenland are Western aligned. The State Route 71 is a terrible aircraft, and I have no idea why everyone always brings it up. Its nemesis, the MiG-31, can go almost just as fast without pissing fuel everywhere before the fuselage heats up. 368-12871. No one has any hypersonic aircraft or reusable drones, and only Russia has a functional in-atmosphere hypersonic cruise missile because Congress allowed the US MiG to consolidate too much, and now due to the lack of competition they can get away with repeated failures that make them more money, since we now have no alternative but to keep funding the research. The main issue with making a manned hypersonic aircraft is the cockpit glass. The State Route 71 and MiG-31 have to slow down and stay at altitude for a certain amount of time before descending, or the hotter air will result in cracks. Putin is a master at politicking and social engineering from his years as a KGB agent, however his extreme paranoia is a boon and a curse. His eagerness to disappear his lackeys puts the fear of God into everyone surrounding him, which also means he doesn't get told no. He has networks of people who he knows are incompetent but are fiercely loyal, and his paranoia over tech means the bureaucracy takes forever to get him accurate up-to-date information. His war in Ukraine was a massive blunder, 300 billion of Russian assets taken, and now Russia has turned into a war economy. The U.S. sends in 3% of their budget and equipment and has effectively destabilized their number 2 enemy for a very long time. Any sane and intelligent man with resources who is conscript age left the country when the signs were there. The Ukrainian war would have worked had he not invaded Crimea, which, although the world did jack shit, emboldened anti-Russian sentiment and failed at getting to the hearts and minds of Ukrainians. Russia had the Eastern Bloc in the palm of their hands. Had they played the long game, Russia and China would have overtaken the US. Which leads me to believe his health scares led him to lead a Peter the Great campaign, which of course failed. The TR-3B has been declassified for at least half a decade. Which means the U.S. is ramping up for something big. While not completely, it's still my favorite plane and I wish I could fly it, but I'm not autistic enough to pursue an Air Force career or become a pilot. The MiG-31 is nowhere near as fast, and we've been able to go hypersonic since the SR-71 and X-15, and that's declassified. TR-3B isn't a real airplane, just an Aviation Week fantasy. In response to ramping up for something big. The State Route 72 is also another absurd Aviation Week fantasy. There is no reason for it to exist because satellites and drones do, and no one in the US wants to see a billion-dollar airplane get shot down on its first mission. All of its intended recon targets have the S-400. The US has no hypersonic airplanes, no one does. The State Route 71 would have to be almost twice as fast to go hypersonic. It flies Mach 3.3, not Mach 5. The X-15 was a rocket with a seat, not a functional weapons system that can fly at a sustained speed and perform missions. MiG-31 flies Mach 2.8, almost as fast as the normal speed of an State Route 71, otherwise it couldn't perform an intercept of the State Route 71, which was half of its intended mission. If you redline the engines and ascend to 70 km, you can fly Mach 3.2 on the MiG-31 and likely to Mach 3.5 on the State Route 71. One leaks fuel and the other doesn't, which makes it a far more useful operational system that can be used on a regular basis. If they can actually create the MiG-41, the external skin will likely be entirely an advanced titanium alloy and the cockpit glass a plainer synthetic sapphire. I see really nothing stopping them from scaring up another 2 Mach since 3.2 was done in the early 1970s. The only problem was the engine technology of the era burning out too quickly. Russia doesn't have conscripts in Ukraine, only reservists who previously completed military service. One side has guys getting turned away for being too young and with no experience, the other is drafting women and AIDS patients. Tell me who is winning? South Africa won't ever truly collapse as in the dissolution of a functional government, since the business interests can simply pay the Boers or foreign mercenaries to solve the problem. The USA and other UAP-enabled nations have spent the last 70 years leeching and deceiving these resources from third world nations in South America and Africa. The first world is all set as far as materials and resources go. Planet Earth is a meat grinder where the haves always triumph over the have-nots. Have you not the foresight to know that anyone with a button-up shirt and tie on is set to rule the solar system from a throne of cyanide and lowly blood in nullified gravity? Have you not the pattern recognition to know you are in the ruling circle or roped into resisting Ilmaus as a skin that will protect this new brain, new body? The actual top speed of the SR-71 is still classified, and yes, we have had hypersonic capabilities since the 1960s.
Like, share, subscribe and be sure to check the notification bell. Follow the Atomic Shaman on Twitter at Motel and RV Park. Listen to Paranormal Green Text Stories on Atomic Shaman TTS on YouTube. Catch the live streams of Atomic Shaman Sweat Lodge only on Rumble.